Number 11. Missing planes revealed by melting ice. Glaciers are retreating at an unprecedented rate, meaning that sea ice is melting faster than ever before seen in our lifetimes, and many generations before us even. Scientists are very alarmed by this, and they should be. But some world powers, including the US, Canada, the United Kingdom, Russia, China, and others, see the disappearing ice as an opportunity to ramp up their Arctic military training exercises. Both soldiers and civilians are coming across long-lost military vehicles and equipment, which are appearing after spending years or even decades buried beneath snow and ice. For example, in June 2020, a military crew traveled to Alaska's Colony Glacier to investigate the recently unthawed wreckage of a Cold War-era plane that crashed in 1952 while en route to Elmendorf Air Force Base in Anchorage. Until the recent mission, the Douglas C-124 Globemaster had left from Tacoma, Washington with 52 U.S. military service members aboard. But the flight encountered heavy snow and fog, and it was impossible to make a diverted landing at an airport nearby. The pilots tried to land using their instruments alone and with no visual references. Sadly, the plane crashed into Mount Gannett just 60 miles from its final destination. Investigators assessed the wreck shortly after the crash but left it on the mountainside. Over time, it slowly slid down the mountain and became encased in ice, causing it to disappear from view completely. Over the years, numerous search missions were performed in hopes of bringing the soldiers' remains home to the surviving family members. And while climate change is responsible for revealing the wreck, it also threatened to plunge the aircraft into a nearby lake. The military worked diligently to recover the bodies, and at last update, they had identified all but 9 crew members. Number 10. Mystery chainmail. Archaeologists were shocked in 2019 when they discovered a previously unknown type of chainmail armor at Deltum, the site of an ancient Roman colony in southeastern Bulgaria near the Black Sea coast. The chainmail was surprisingly well preserved, dating back to sometime between the 4th and 6th centuries. It may come from late antiquity, which encompasses the later years of the Roman Empire before it split into the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire. The armor may also date back to the early years of the Byzantine Empire. It's the first chainmail of its type to be discovered in Bulgaria and comes from one of 3 colonies in the region that were considered to be of equal status to Rome itself. Archaeologists found the wrought iron chainmail in 6,000 pieces near the northern wall of Deltum Fortress. The pieces came from 2 or 3 unique sets of armor. Researchers believe that the suits were leaned up against the wall that collapsed and crushed them. Traces of wood residue were found on the chainmail, suggesting that it was once stored in a wooden box. The next step for experts is to determine the chainmail's age, distinguish how many suits of armor the pieces come from, and restore the artifacts. At the time of the discovery, they said they expected it to take 3 to 4 years for them to remove the rust and piece the suits back together. Number 9. Submerged soldier. In late 2020, divers and archaeologists in Lithuania discovered the remains of a medieval soldier in Lake Asvėja. They were inspecting a bridge when they came across the submerged skeleton 30 feet below the water's surface. Nearby, the team found the man's personal belongings, including a sword, leather boots, and 2 knives. The skeleton and the personal effects are thought to date back to the 16th century. They were remarkably intact after spending centuries buried beneath a thick layer of mud and sand. But this was no burial, according to archaeologist Elena Prankanite, who told the news agency LRT that the discovery was the first of its kind in Lithuania. The soldier may have drowned or died some other way during combat. He may have served at nearby WWII Castle, an important fortress that once protected Lithuania from invaders. At the time, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania was one of Eastern Europe's most powerful states. The soldier's cause of death remains undetermined. Shortly after the discovery, experts announced that his remains were undergoing further analysis and that his belongings were being conserved. Number 8. Missing military planes. In 2003, U.S. military search teams found dozens of Iraqi Air Force fighter jets buried in the Al-Taqadum airfield west of Baghdad. The shocking discovery was made when one of the searchers noticed that the tail fins of a Cold War-era fighter jet stuck out of the sand. It was apparent that the planes were fully intact when they were buried, but no measures had ever been taken to protect them from the sand. Several other abandoned aircraft were found hidden beneath trees and draped with camouflage sheets. To further conceal the aircraft, the Iraqi military had scattered the airfield with planes that had been destroyed in previous wars, making it difficult for bombers to choose targets worth striking. Before the Iraq War, intelligence analysts estimated that Iraq's military had 300 combat aircraft left over from the Kuwait War in 1991. But the country's air force was conspicuously absent amid the onset of the Iraq War in 2003, leading U.S. military officials to believe that the fighter jets were not being used because they were deemed inadequate against American and British air power. The search team was looking for weapons of mass destruction when it found the planes, which are obviously a lot less dangerous. But as Congressman Porter Goss pointed out, they are still weapons that Iraq tried to hide. If you're new to the channel, welcome. What do you think so far? Is there anything specific you'd like to see from us in the future? Let us know in the comments down below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 7. Sacrificed soldiers' armor. While working in Kalkriess, Germany in 2020, a team of archaeologists discovered a near-complete set of Roman armor. The cuirass, which consists of the breastplate and backplate, dates back to the year 9 BC, when Germanic tribes wiped out 3 Roman legions in the area. At the time of the discovery, researchers said that they believe it's the oldest and most complete Roman armor ever found. It was probably worn by a soldier who participated in the Battle of Teutoburg Forest, in which the Romans suffered a devastating defeat. An estimated 15,000 to 20,000 Roman soldiers died during the battle. It's considered one of the empire's biggest and most humiliating military defeats. Throughout the skirmish, Germanic warriors repeatedly attacked the Romans guerrilla style. It certainly helped that their warlord, a former Roman citizen named Arminius, was trained in Roman military strategy. Alongside the armor, the team found something called a shrew's fiddle, which was used for locking a person's hands near their neck, indicating that they were ritually sacrificed. The discovery revealed that the craftsmanship of Roman armor was of higher quality than researchers previously believed, and that its designs changed over time. Number 6. 5 sunken World War II submarines. Since 2011, ocean explorer Tim Taylor and his crew have discovered 7 lost submarines, including 5 that disappeared during World War II. Included among them is the USS R-12, which sank 11 miles off the Florida Keys during a training exercise. Helen Cashel Baldwin, whose father was among those who went missing, spent 70 years longing to know exactly what happened to him. Without proper closure, she found herself unable to properly grieve. Taylor took Baldwin and her siblings to the site and showed them drone images of the wreck, enabling them to finally have a proper memorial and pay their respects. He received the Distinguished Public Service Award, which is the Navy's highest civilian honor. Altogether, Taylor discovered the final resting places of 288 soldiers. He told NBC that he was motivated by his desire to help surviving relatives close the void left behind from not knowing what happened to their fallen loved ones. Taylor credits modern technology for playing an imperative role in his success, but it was undoubtedly his genuine drive to help families heal that brought the mission full circle. Number 5. Weingout I. In 1944 and 1945, the Third Reich tried to build a network of underground factories and bunkers that could withstand Allied bombing campaigns. One such facility, codenamed Weingout I, was built in the remote wilderness outside Munich in southeastern Germany. It was meant to be a 9-story production facility for building jet engines. Once it was finished, the plan was to cover it with soil and vegetation to keep it hidden from view. By the time construction began, however, the Allies had already seized control of German airspace. The Nazis were losing the war, and it quickly became evident that Weingout I would never be built in time to help them in any meaningful way. But the project went forward anyway, with a 6-month deadline imposed. Over 8,500 of the 10,000 workers were forced laborers. More than 3,000 of them were worked to death or died of starvation or other forms of brutal treatment that they suffered at the hands of the Nazis. It proved impossible to keep the massive structure a secret from the US military, which captured overhead images of it. The Americans chose not to bomb the site, perhaps because they knew that there was a forced labor camp nearby, or because they knew there was no way the project would be finished by the war's end. Only 7 of the 12 planned bunker sections were built before the U.S. Army took over the site in 1945. 2 years later, they demolished all but one section, which still stands today. Number 4. D-Day Wall Identities. Over 75 years ago, more than 70 American soldiers etched their names into a wall in Southampton, England, while waiting to be sent to Normandy. The Maritime Archaeology Trust began a project to digitally record the wall after historians noticed that the etchings were eroding. Previous research that was carried out during the 1970s had led to the identification of some of the soldiers who left their names on the wall, but many of the signatures remained a mystery until relatively recently. Specialized photography helped researchers identify 30 more names. Many of the soldiers, who were members of the 99th and 106th Infantry Divisions, had fought in the Battle of the Bulge. 2 of the men would later become prisoners of war. Several of them survived the war, including William Muller, a New Yorker who became an aeronautical engineer, and Ralph Odom, who went on to work in construction. The trust contacted the families of the newly identified men. Speaking with the BBC, the daughter of one veteran said that there were no words to describe her gratitude and appreciation. In the words of Southampton Mayor Peter Bale, the wall is a fantastic reminder of the human aspect to D-Day, where people actually inscribed their names on a wall as they went to war. Number 3. Nijmegen helmet. During the 1st or 2nd century AD, a Roman warrior passed through what is now the Dutch city of Nijmegen and left his helmet behind. Known as the Nijmegen helmet, it was found in 1915 on the bank of the Wall River. It's made primarily of iron and either brass or bronze and is equipped with a neck-protecting shield made of bronze and silver. The helmet also has a diadem, or crown, featuring 2 male and 3 female figures. This is just one of several Roman cavalry sports helmets that have been found in the area and elsewhere. These helmets were typically used in cavalry parades and mock battles. The Crosby-Garrett helmet is another fascinating example of a Roman helmet. Like the Nijmegen helmet, it dates back to sometime during the 1st or 2nd century. Made from a copper alloy, the headgear was discovered in 2010 by a metal detectorist in Cumbria, England. Further investigation revealed that the site was once a Roman farming settlement located near a Roman road and army fort, indicating that the helmet probably belonged to a local resident who served in the military. It was auctioned off at Christie's for over $2,800,000. Number 2. Rare fighting blade. While searching for a lost battlefield site in north-central Poland last year, archaeologists unexpectedly discovered a rare ancient blade in nearly perfect condition. Known as a Langsac's long knife, it was found in a park where experts believe a battle may have occurred during the Polish-Pomeranian conflict of 1091 AD. Oddly, the knife may have had nothing to do with the skirmish. It appears to be what experts call a loose find, which means that there's no evidence that the artifact has a wider connection to its surrounding, at least according to archaeologist Mateusz Sosnowski. He described the blade's size as impressive, adding that it could easily measure up against double-edged swords from that period. Archaeologist Dr. Peter Prank told the press that the weapon could date as far back as the 8th century and that it may be Norwegian, pointing toward possible Viking origins. The tip of the blade is slightly bent, but it otherwise contains no visible damage. The team hopes to learn more about the knife by performing metallographic and other tests, which will hopefully reveal its origins. Number 1. World War I shelter. During World War I, a group of 20 Austro-Hungarian soldiers spent 3.5 years living in brutal conditions in the Italian Alps while fighting the Italians in a long, drawn-out battle known as the White War. When they first arrived, the men built a crude wooden shelter atop a 10,154-foot peak called Mount Scorluzzo, where winter temperatures plunge as low as minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Their stay was meant to be temporary, but they found themselves spending far more time than they wanted in the cramped makeshift space. When the war finally ended in 1918, the soldiers didn't waste any time closing up the shelter and leaving Mount Scorluzzo. They left most of their belongings there. The only visitors who reached the site before it became buried in snow were some scrappers looking for metal to sell. World War I relics began to appear throughout the Alps during the 1990s as climate change sped up the melting of glaciers. Since then, a plethora of perfectly preserved artifacts have been recovered across various sites, including diaries, weapons, letters, tools, equipment, and more. Soldiers' bodies have also been found. Researchers entered the barracks on Mount Scorluzzo for the first time in 2017, after the ice that had encased it for nearly a century had melted away. They found food, dishes, bottles, animal skin jackets, straw mattresses, coins, helmets, ammunition, and other items that the troops gladly left behind when it was time to go home. Thanks for watching. Which one of these discoveries do you think is the most interesting? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you again next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.